Hi, everyone. Today we're diving into a story that might start off quiet, but trust me, it doesn't stay that way. This is about what happens when a man just wants to eat his breakfast in peace and instead gets treated like a criminal. But the real twist, he makes one phone call and everything changes. This could happen to anyone, even you. So before we dive into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from and what time is it right now where you are? Let's begin. It's just after 8:00 a.m. on a gray Tuesday in Fairview, Georgia, the kind of morning where the clouds sit low, like they're too tired to move and the whole street feels like it hasn't woken up yet. On Pinecrest Road past the shuttered pawn shop and the always steaming laundromat sits an old-school diner called Harlan's. It's got a faded blue awning coffee that's more about comfort than flavor, and regulars who don't need menus because they always order the same thing. In the corner booth by the window, the one with the cracked vinyl seat and the chipped sugar holder, Malcolm Rhodes settles in. 60 in a few months with deep-set eyes and calloused hands, Malcolm wears a faded olive field jacket, the same one he's had for decades. The cuffs are frayed. The elbow patches are more duct tape than fabric now. But it's clean and it smells faintly of pipe tobacco and old leather. He carries a flip phone with a scratched-up screen, and when he sits down, he always places it face down beside his plate, like it's keeping watch. Tina, the waitress, notices him the moment he walks in like always. She's in her mid-30s, her ponytail tied up high with a sharp voice softened by tired kindness. Two kids at home, both in elementary school. She runs that diner floor like a conductor. "Morning, mister." "Rhodes," she calls as she passes by his booth. "Morning," Tina, Malcolm says with a nod. "You want your usual?" "If the eggs are fresh," he answers with a slight smile. "They always are. And I'll see if Walt didn't burn the toast today." Walt, the diner's owner, pretends not to hear that, glancing up from behind the counter. He's in his 60s, ex-Marine gruff voice, but loyal to his regulars, especially Malcolm. He once told Tina that man's got more dignity in his little finger than most men walking around in suits. To the rest of the world passing by outside, Malcolm looks like someone forgotten by time. No car, no fixed address. Boots with soles that whisper stories of long roads walked. But inside Harlan's, he's not a shadow. He's family. A quiet, steady presence that everyone respects even if they don't say it out loud. The diner hums with its usual rhythm. Silverware clinks. The radio plays low, something old from Otis Redding. Tina slides Malcolm's plate in front of him, scrambled eggs, bacon toast, not quite burnt, and a steaming mug of black coffee. No cream, no sugar. Just like he likes it. Malcolm eats slow, always has. Cuts the bacon with the side of his fork, wipes his mouth with the same folded napkin. He watches the small TV mounted over the counter as the local news covers potholes, school delays, and veterans not receiving their benefits. His eyes don't change, but he sighs through his nose quietly, like a man who's seen too much to be surprised. The bell above the door jingles, and that's when everything shifts. Two officers step in. They don't pause, don't nod, don't say good morning. They don't belong to this place, not in the way the regulars do. One is tall, early 40s, his frame still clinging to the ghost of a football career. That's Officer Denton. The other is shorter, stockier, younger Officer Miles with a clipboard tucked under one arm and a blank expression that suggests he's just there to follow orders. Tina's voice lifts out of habit. "Morning, officers. You want a booth or the counter?" They don't answer. Denton's eyes are already locked onto Malcolm. Without a word, they cross the room. Sir Denton says loud enough for the room to hear. "Are you a paying customer here?" Malcolm sets his fork down slowly, wipes the corner of his mouth, looks up calm. "Yes, I am." "You order food." "It's right there," Malcolm replies, motioning to his plate. "Coffee's hot, too." "You got a receipt?" Denton presses. Tina steps in before Malcolm can answer. "I rang him up. He's good." Denton doesn't look at her. "Did I ask you?" Tina's jaw tightens. "No, but I answered anyway." Walt watches from behind the counter. Doesn't move, doesn't speak, but he sees everything. Miles leans in. "You got ID?" Malcolm reaches into his coat, slow and deliberate, and pulls out a worn leather wallet. He opens it and slides out a laminated card. "VA card," he says. Denton snorts. "This all you've got?" Malcolm meets his eyes. "It's all I need." The diner's energy shifts. A couple at the next booth go quiet. Someone near the door stops mid-bite. Tina sets her coffee pot down. Hard. How long you been here? Denton asks, arms folded. Malcolm glances at the wall clock. About half an hour. And how long you plan on staying long enough to finish my breakfast? Tina moves forward. He's a regular. Every Tuesday, same time. Pays cash, always polite. Denton ignores her. You homeless. Malcolm nods once. No fixed address. But I've got a home here. In this town. Denton gives a cold little smirk. You got a lot of answers, don't you? Malcolm doesn't flinch, doesn't raise his voice. Just says I've had to. Miles steps back, fiddling with the radio on his shoulder. He mumbles something about running the name. Walt's had enough. He steps out from behind the counter. You got a reason to be bothering this man, or are we just checking breakfast orders now? Responding to a complaint, Denton replies vaguely. From who? Walt challenges. Denton doesn't answer. Malcolm finishes his bite of toast, calmly wipes his fingers on the napkin, and then slowly picks up his flip phone. Opens it, presses one button, holds it to his ear. It's happening again, he says, then hangs up. He doesn't explain who he called. He doesn't have to, because something in the air changes. Tina steps back. Walt squints. The officer's shift suddenly unsure. Denton narrows his eyes. Who did you just call? Malcolm sets the phone down on the table. Calm. Still. You said you were doing your job, he replies softly. Now I'm doing mine. For a full minute, nobody speaks. The diner stays frozen in a kind of breathless suspense. Forks, halfway to mouths, coffee mugs, clutched midair, eyes flicking between the officers and the man in the booth who just made one quiet call. Tina's hands tremble slightly as she reaches for the pot she'd set down. Walt's knuckles whiten around the edge of the counter. Officer Denton doesn't like silence. He puffs out his chest and steps closer to Malcolm, tapping his fingers on his duty belt. Sir, I'm going to need you to stand up and come outside with us. No, Walt says firmly from behind the counter. Not unless you're arresting him, and if you are, you better have a reason that'll hold up. Officer Miles glances toward the front door, and right then it swings open. No sirens, no flashing lights. Just a man in a navy overcoat moving with the kind of confidence that makes people take a step back without thinking. He looks mid-40s, clean-shaven, sharp eyes. There's no badge on his chest, but he holds up a leather ID case like it weighs more than it looks. Agent Julian Kerr, he announces. Department of Justice. I need the badge numbers of both responding officers. Now. Denton stiffens. With all due respect, sir, we were responding to a report of suspicious loitering. There was no report, Kerr says sharply, eyes locking on him. We monitor open radio channels for keywords. This interaction was flagged, recorded, and reviewed as it happened. You're both on record the moment you question this man without cause. Miles starts to stammer. We were just. Kerr cuts him off. You questioned a veteran without probable cause, mocked his ID, and escalated without justification. And you didn't even bother to verify his service record before treating him like a suspect. Denton tries to regain control. He's homeless. We have the right to confirm this man is not just a veteran, Kerr says, stepping past him and turning toward Malcolm. Mr. Rhodes, are you all right? Malcolm doesn't flinch. I'm fine, just tired. Kerr turns back to the officers. Malcolm Rhodes served with distinction in a unit known as Shadow Company. 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. Multiple commendations, including a Bronze Star and a Distinguished Service Cross. You think you're the first 2 to treat him like a criminal for sitting down to eat, because you're not. The room is silent again, but this time it's the heavy kind. The kind that drapes over everyone like fog just rolled in. Denton's jaw tightens. So what, we're supposed to just let him? You're supposed to treat him with the same respect you'd give anyone else. Kerr interrupts, voice low, but razor sharp. Actually, scratch that. More, because he earned it. Walt lets out a slow exhale, as if he's been holding it for minutes. Tina doesn't look away from the officers. You see him as a problem, but he's been more honest than half the people who walk through that door. Kerr steps between Malcolm and the officers. The body cam footage will be reviewed by Internal Affairs within the hour. I suggest you both wait outside for further instruction. Miles glances at Denton, who looks like he wants to fight the air, but eventually they both back away. Denton mutters something under his breath as they leave, but no one responds. When the door finally shuts behind them, Kerr turns to Malcolm and lowers his voice. You didn't want to call me. I didn't, Malcolm admits, slowly sipping his coffee. But I wasn't about to explain myself to another clipboard. Kerr smiles faintly. I get it. Tina finally speaks. What now? Now Kerr straightens. Now we clean this up before it becomes national news. But it's already too late for that. Because what no one in that room knows not yet is that the cruiser's dash cam and body cam footage are already bouncing through encrypted group chats. One of the kitchen staff had their cousin record a bit of the incident on their phone. And less than 20 minutes after the officers walked in, a 3-minute video clip appears on TikTok. Captioned simply, he just wanted breakfast. In the video, you see Malcolm sitting calmly, hands resting on the table. You hear Denton's voice questioning him, asking for ID, implying he's just wasting space. You hear Tina speaking up. You hear Walt stepping in. You see Malcolm flip open his phone and say, "It's happening again." Then cut to the door slamming open. Kerr enters. The confrontation ends. 3 minutes. That's all it takes. In the first hour, the clip is viewed 80,000 times. By lunchtime, 500,000. By dinner time, 1 million. People in every corner of the country watch it on phones, tablets, TVs. They comment with anger, with disbelief, with heartbreak. This is what he got for serving I Know That diner. My dad used to eat there. Someone give that man a house already. Tag the DOJ, tag the mayor. This isn't okay. The hashtag #DeReCharge Malcolm Rhodes starts trending nationwide. That night, CNN runs a segment. By morning, the Washington Post has his name on the front page. And through it all, Malcolm stays exactly where he always is, at that same booth, with his same coffee, staring quietly out the window. He doesn't check the internet. He doesn't scroll through the comments. He doesn't even own a computer. But he knows something's changed. You can feel it in the way people walk past him now. Not with pity, not with fear, with something closer to awe. Walt walks by the table and leans in. You good? Malcolm nods once. You sure Malcolm doesn't smile? Doesn't need to. They saw it. Walt raises an eyebrow. Saw what the truth, Malcolm says simply. Finally. By Wednesday morning, Malcolm Rhodes is no longer just a man who eats breakfast at Harlan's Diner. He's a national headline, a trending topic, a symbol. It starts with the local news station in Macon airing a 5-minute segment titled "Homeless Veteran Harassed While Eating Breakfast." But it doesn't stop there. Within hours, the clip is picked up by major outlets, CNN, MSNBC, even Fox News, with each network running their own version of the story. Malcolm's name scrolls across tickers as pundits debate the state of policing homelessness and how America treats its veterans. What catches people's attention isn't just the confrontation, it's Malcolm's calm. The quiet way he responds. The way he doesn't shout, doesn't argue, just lets the truth sit there. And that line, "It's happening again," starts showing up on t-shirts, protest signs, tweets, comment sections. It resonates in a way that no one expects. Because for millions of Americans, it is happening again. By Thursday, photos begin to surface. Not new ones. Old ones, grainy, weathered. A young Malcolm in full combat gear standing in front of a Humvee in the desert. Another of him beside 2 other soldiers, all wearing the distinctive patch of Shadow Company. There's dirt on his face and something heavy in his eyes. No smile. Just duty. A veteran who served with him anonymously uploads a commendation letter. Staff Sergeant Malcolm Rhodes displayed unmatched valor during hostage recovery efforts in Fallujah. His leadership directly saved the lives of 3 civilians and 2 fellow soldiers. The internet does what it always does, it digs. And what it finds only adds fuel to the fire. Malcolm never asked for any of this. There are no interviews on file, no books written, no retirement ceremony. Just a paper trail of honor buried beneath years of silence. A VA record, a discharge letter, a series of unanswered emails about housing assistance. But suddenly people are paying attention. Veterans groups begin speaking out. A nonprofit in Atlanta offers Malcolm permanent housing and a full-time therapist. An online fundraiser for justice for Malcolm Rhodes crosses $200,000 in 3 days. Former service members from across the country post videos thanking him for his service. Some share their own stories of being questioned, dismissed, forgotten, and quietly, steadily pressure mounts on the Fairview Police Department. Officer Miles, the younger of the 2, resigns on Friday morning. No press release, no explanation. just a signed document and a locked Twitter account. Officer Denton, however, digs in. He appears on a local AM radio show and tries to defend himself, claiming he was just doing his job and that he had no way of knowing who Mr. Rhodes really was. But that interview backfires when someone leaks screenshots of old Facebook comments Denton made years ago, comments filled with thinly veiled contempt for the homeless and casual racism. They spread like wildfire. By Friday night, protesters gather outside Fairview City Hall. Not a mob, not chaos, just a quiet line stretching down the block. They carry signs that read, "I am Malcolm Rhodes." Respect is not a luxury. Being poor is not a crime. Some hold candles. Others simply stand in silence. The mayor holds a late-night press conference. She promises a full investigation. The police chief mumbles through an apology that sounds like it was written by lawyers. Neither mention Malcolm by name, but it doesn't matter, because the footage did what words couldn't. It showed the world what happens when power forgets who it's supposed to protect. Back at the diner, nothing feels normal anymore. Tina's been interviewed twice. Walt's photo was posted on a local blog titled "The Man Who Stood with Malcolm." Regulars come in now not just for coffee, but to sit where Malcolm sat to ask Tina what he's really like. One man asks if he can take a selfie with the booth. Tina says no. Malcolm watches it all unfold with quiet discomfort. He still wears the same jacket, still orders the same breakfast, still pays in cash. But the way people look at him has changed. He's not invisible anymore, but he's not sure that's a good thing. One afternoon, a teenage girl walks into the diner, hoodie pulled up, phone in hand. She doesn't order anything, just walks straight to Malcolm's booth. "You him?" she asks. He looks up slowly. "Excuse me, you're the guy from the video, right? My brother sent it to me. Said you shut down 2 cops with 1 phone call." Malcolm leans back. "Is that what they're saying?" "Yeah," she grins. "They're calling you the silent warrior. That's badass." He exhales. Not angry, just tired. "You're not invisible anymore," she adds almost softly. Then she turns and walks out. Tina walks over a minute later with fresh coffee. She saw the exchange. "She's right," she says. Malcolm doesn't answer. A few minutes later, Walt walks over holding a small box. "Guy from the VA dropped this off for you," he says. Didn't leave a name. Malcolm opens it slowly. Inside, a clean dress shirt, a new pair of boots, a prepaid cell phone, and a handwritten note. It says, "Thank you, Sergeant Rhodes. We see you now." Malcolm closes the box, leaves it on the bench beside him, stares out the window for a long time. Because the truth is, he didn't ask for attention. He just wanted breakfast, and maybe a little peace. But now he's become something else, a reminder, a mirror. And people don't always like what they see reflected back. The following Sunday morning, the streets of Fairview are still quiet, but the tension in the air has shifted. Outside Harlan's diner, the crowd has finally thinned. No more camera crews parked across the street. No more strangers lingering in the lot hoping to catch a glimpse of the man from the video. Inside, it's just the regulars again. People who've known Malcolm for years, who never needed a headline to see his worth. Malcolm Rhodes walks in wearing the same field jacket, creased at the elbows, worn at the seams. But today he carries himself a little differently. Not with pride, not with defiance, just with presence. He nods at Tina, who's refilling sugar jars, and gives Walt a silent wave as he moves past the counter. But instead of sitting down, Malcolm clears his throat. It's quiet, barely louder than the hum of the refrigerator behind the bar. But Tina hears it. She pauses mid-scoop. "Mr. Rhodes, I've got something to say." He says, his voice low and calm, but heavy enough to cut through the morning shuffle. The diner stills. Forks clink gently against plates and then stop. Walt looks up from behind the counter. Someone near the back turns off the little TV playing reruns of Bonanza. Malcolm steps into the center of the floor, rests his hand lightly on the back of a chair. "I'm not a hero," he says. "Didn't ask to be a story. I came in here last week for some eggs, some coffee, like I have every Tuesday for the past 5 years." Tina wipes her hands on her apron. Walt leans forward, arms crossed, listening closely. "You all saw me," Malcolm continues, eyes scanning the room. "Not as a problem, not as a burden, as a person. But some folks didn't. And maybe now, after all this attention, people are finally watching. But attention isn't the same as understanding." There's a quiet murmur of agreement. A few heads nod. A man in the corner lowers his newspaper. I wore this jacket in the desert, Malcolm says, tapping the frayed cloth. I watched good men die for this country. Men who never made it home. Men who didn't get a second chance. I didn't ask for a parade, just a plate. I didn't ask for applause, just a seat. He looks around the diner at the faces of people who've watched him age limp, carry bags through cold winters, and never once ask for help. And still I had to prove I belong. Tina presses her lips together, her eyes glassy. She's trying not to cry. Walt doesn't move, but his grip on the counter tightens. There are thousands like me, Malcolm says. You won't see them on the news. You won't hear their names. Some of them sleep in shelters, some in trucks. Some just stop talking because they got tired of being invisible. He raises one hand not in anger, but in steadiness. But hear this. Being poor isn't a crime. Being tired isn't a weakness. And asking to be treated like a human being should never be met with suspicion. No one claps. No one needs to. It's not that kind of moment. Tina wipes her cheek quickly. Walt nods once solemnly. We all carry stories no one else sees, Malcolm finishes. So the next time someone walks into a room and they don't look like they belong, maybe they do. Maybe they belong more than you know. And with that, he sits back down at his booth, quietly, as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Because by the next morning, that speech, recorded discreetly by a college student who'd happened to be there, goes viral just like the first video. It's shared not with outrage this time, but with reverence. Clips circulate with captions like, "The speech America needed to hear." "Not a hero" sounds like one to me. Just a plate, just a seat, just dignity. And as that second wave of attention rolls across the country, something else changes, something Malcolm doesn't fully see. In the background, bigger forces start moving. The Department of Veterans Affairs issues a statement. The Secretary of Veterans Affairs personally calls Malcolm. A congressional subcommittee opens a review into VA housing delays for veterans. His story is cited in floor speeches, talk shows, Sunday morning political panels. He doesn't watch any of it, doesn't want to, but it's there. His quiet resistance ripples into rooms where people have long forgotten what real sacrifice looks like. At the diner, people begin leaving envelopes on Malcolm's table. Letters, drawings from kids. One has a $10 bill and a note that just says, "For your next breakfast. You deserve warm food every day." Malcolm reads some. Others he folds carefully and slips into his coat pocket. Not because he's collecting them, but because they're proof. Proof that people do see him now. That he's not invisible anymore. But that visibility comes with weight. One day after walking home from the shelter, Malcolm finds two men in suits waiting for him by the steps. One is young and fresh-faced, the other older with gray at the temples. "Mr. Rhodes," the older one says gently, "we're here on behalf of the Secretary of Veterans Affairs." They hand him an envelope. Inside is an official letter apologizing for the years he slipped through the cracks, for the case files that gathered dust, for the nights he slept on concrete while agencies traded responsibility. The letter offers expedited housing, a full-time counselor, and ongoing support. Malcolm holds it in his hand like it's a puzzle piece from a game he never agreed to play. "I didn't ask for this," he says quietly. "No, sir," the young man answers. "But you earned it." Later that night, back at the shelter, Malcolm lays awake staring at the ceiling. He doesn't sleep. Not really. He's thinking about the men he served with, about the ones who never made it home, about the ones who did but never found peace. They didn't go viral. They just vanished. And that's what keeps him up. Not anger, not pride, just the weight of being seen when so many others never were. By the following week, the headlines begin to shift. A celebrity divorce overtakes the news cycle. A wildfire in California burns across the screen. The algorithms change as they always do. But in Fairview, Georgia, life doesn't reset. Not for Malcolm Rhodes. He doesn't go back to being invisible, but he also doesn't let the noise consume him. The housing voucher arrives in a crisp envelope. It's more than a place, it's stability. A second-floor apartment in a quiet complex just 2 blocks from the diner. Nothing fancy. No stainless steel appliances or vaulted ceilings. But it's warm, safe, and his. For the first time in years, he has a key to something no one can take away. The first thing he moves in is a photo, a black and white shot of his unit from Iraq. Three men, sun-beaten, dust-covered arms around each other. Two of them are gone now. The third is Malcolm, younger. Eyes harder. The second thing he brings is his coffee mug from Harlan's with the chipped rim. Tina insisted he take it. "You've earned that mug," she said, smiling, but teary-eyed. Walt came by to help carry a box, said nothing when he saw the inside of the apartment. Just nodded quietly proud. It doesn't take long before Malcolm fills the space with small comforts. A radio on the kitchen counter always set to the oldie station. A worn recliner someone donated through the nonprofit. A folded American flag on the shelf, perfectly preserved. He doesn't decorate. He settles. And that's enough. But Malcolm doesn't disappear into his apartment. Instead, he shows up at the local middle school one Thursday afternoon, wearing a collared shirt in the same army jacket. He asks to speak with the principal, says he'd like to volunteer. Mentor the kids who might not see themselves reflected in textbooks or TV screens. It's awkward at first. The staff don't know how to introduce him. There's no title, no official position, but one teacher shrugs and says, "This is Mr. Rhodes." You'll want to hear what he has to say, and they do, because when Malcolm speaks, it isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, but it's real. He talks about service, about being overlooked, about holding your dignity when the world wants to strip it from you, about how sometimes just sitting at a table takes more courage than walking into battle. The students listen, some ask questions, others just nod quietly, like something in them understands more than they expected to. Outside the school, someone paints a mural on the brick wall, Malcolm's silhouette beside the words, "Respect is a right, not a reward." One morning, a small package arrives at the diner. No return address. Inside is a folded American flag and a note for Mr. Rhodes, for reminding us what patriotism looks like. Tina places it on the shelf above the counter, next to a framed photo of Malcolm sipping coffee by the window. Walt never says anything about it, but he wipes the frame down every morning. Meanwhile, the investigation into the Fairview Police Department continues. Officer Denton is officially suspended. His personnel file is reviewed. Old complaints resurface, instances of profiling, verbal abuse, excessive force. Things that were once buried now burn under public scrutiny. He tries to push back, says the world's gone soft, but no one's listening anymore. Not after the footage. Not after the country saw Malcolm sit still while being treated like a criminal and respond with quiet strength. Denton's badge is taken. Miles, the younger one, sends an apology letter to Harlan's. Tina reads it aloud to Malcolm. He listens. Doesn't say much, just nods. "I hope he learned something from it," Malcolm says. "That's all I ever wanted." People still stop him on the street. Some ask for photos, others just shake his hand. A few cry. He never quite knows what to say. Most times he says nothing, just meets their eyes and lets the silence hold the truth. But the biggest change comes quietly. One afternoon, while sitting on the bench outside his apartment, Malcolm watches a man in a suit walk toward him. Clean shoes, pressed collar. But his hands are nervous. "Mr. Rhodes," the man says, "I'm from the Veterans Advocacy Network. We were hoping you might speak at our conference next month." Malcolm raises an eyebrow. About what the man swallows. About what it means to be forgotten. And what it takes to be seen again. Malcolm doesn't answer right away. He looks down at his hands, calloused, rough, still steady. Then he nods. "Okay," he says, "but I'm not here to make people feel comfortable." The man nods quickly. Understood. Because Malcolm knows something now. His voice matters. His presence matters. And if he's going to be seen, he might as well say something that sticks. By the time spring rolls around, the media storm has quieted. The hashtags have faded. The headlines have moved on. But the impact remains. Kids still whisper his name when he walks down the street. The diner still keeps his booth open every Tuesday. And somewhere in a dozen cities, strangers are carrying signs that once read, "I am Malcolm Rhodes," into community meetings, council hearings, and marches. And back in his apartment, Malcolm drinks his coffee in peace. The world still spins, still forgets. But not as easily, not anymore. Sometimes the loudest kind of justice comes from the quietest people. Malcolm Rhodes didn't raise his voice. He didn't wave a flag or give a speech in front of cameras. He just showed up week after week to the same booth with the same routine asking for nothing more than a warm breakfast and the dignity of being left alone. But when power walked in with suspicion, when judgment came wearing a badge, he didn't argue. He didn't shout. He simply stood firm in silence and made one phone call. Not to escalate, not to fight, but to be seen. And that was enough to change everything. Because dignity has weight, it lingers. It pulls truth into the open like gravity. Let Malcolm's story remind us being poor is not shameful. Being homeless is not criminal. And respect should never be conditional on a uniform, a paycheck, or an address. Every day we pass people like Malcolm, at coffee shops, on sidewalks, at red lights. People with stories, with strength, with burdens we'll never fully understand. So the next time you see someone who looks overlooked, look again. Sit beside them. Speak with them. Not out of pity, but out of shared humanity. Because justice isn't just about the big courtroom wins. Sometimes it's about the small things, a plate, a seat, a voice finally heard. And when that moment comes, may we all choose to listen.